I will accept nominations for chair.
I would like to nominate Sheila Dibb for chairman of the Board of Selectmen.
For a second?
I'll second that.
Okay.
I will second it.
Okay, any additional nominations for chair? Not hearing any. I need a vote on appointing designated Sheila Dibb as chair for the coming year. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Sheila, you can take it over from here.
Thank you. Can I take nominations for vice chair?
I'd like to nominate Wayne Walker.
Nominate Wayne Walker for chair, second
Oh.
for chair. Stanley vice chair.
I'm taking the guy on the phone.
I'll second.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll take nominations for clerk.
I'd like to nominate Jeff Stillings for clerk on the Board of Selectmen.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Are there any other nominations? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Skip, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
All opposed?
None.
None. Okay, thank you. Could I have a motion to sign Treasury Warrant 24 and payroll?
So moved.
So,
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
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 We have 4 sets of minutes here, none of which, I think we'll skip them all tonight since
We
Skip's
can't
not
do
here
any
in
of them.
person. Well, we can if Skip's here in person, a couple of them. A couple are gonna have to be a special approval. And I think we can go right into our 6:05 appointment with Mr. Moriarty. Come on up. Or down.
I'm gonna pass these down for signature. These are the warrants for this week.
Just give you a quick department update and then get on to the real stuff that we need to talk about. Over the past month and a half, we've had some incidents that occurred that we don't see very often. One being a plane crash that occurred in the town of New Braintree that the town of Barry was involved with. We did receive all the 911 calls for that due to the proximity of the call that was placed. Another incident that occurred was a motor vehicle pursuit that actually stretched out through 3 of our communities, Rutland, Hubbardston, and Barry, ended in a foot pursuit as well. My staff handled those exceptionally. Recently promoted Michelle Jones to dispatch supervisor approximately 2 months ago now. And we're currently in the hiring process for 2 part-timers. We're in the second phase of that process. And then talk about Warren now. So over the last couple of weeks, I've been meeting with the town officials from Warren, the police chief, fire chief, and the chairman of their board. Recently, we received a letter from the chairman of the board looking to move forward with regionalizing with the Rutland Rec. Right now, I am working on drafting up an IMA, a single IMA for all 5 towns to place their signatures on, accepting Warren into this, into the rec. That is what the state's looking for right now, is that IMA to change our status in our development grant that we just submitted. Right now, the status is Warren is just looking into joining. Getting that IMA signed by all 5 communities and producing that to the state will change our status to Warren's ready to join, which gives us a better probability of getting everything that we asked for in the grant, which was, I think, roughly $824,000 that we applied for this year. That's to bring Warren over and some other infrastructure pieces that we need to actually bring them on, being our radio consoles. Right now, those are currently maxed out. We applied for all brand new consoles. That's about $250,000 for that. But what the state really wants to see is the district model. The board previously signed a letter of support on moving forward with the district here in Rutland as well as the town of Hubbardston. Still working on Barry and Ocam to move forward with joining a district model. That's what communities are looking for. That's what Warren is looking for. They want to see us moving towards a district. Gives everybody a seat at the table when it comes to decisions with the rec, administrative, operationally, and financially. So I'm still working on that. I got a meeting with Barry to try to resolve them on June 4th with the State 911 Department as well, to hopefully answer all their questions and move forward. And OCAM will be shortly after. That's with Warren. The other piece of information I need to bring up now is we're growing and we're starting to max out our space that we have right now currently in the public safety building. Looking for space throughout Rutland, buildings. The State 911 Department will not build a brand new building. They will pay to renovate in an existing building. So currently right now, just ideas on the table right now. 2 of them is the town annex. That's one idea to separate us, get our own building. There's plenty of room there. And then there's also another option on the table, which the town of Barry has offered, which is completely the 3rd floor of the Henry Woods building, which has plenty of room up there as well. Don't know if the board would like to see dispatch move into another community, but those are the 2 options on the board. The spot in Barry right now is completely vacant. We need to start having discussions on building space, where we can grow. With Warren, it's gonna totally max out our center. We won't have any additional space to bring anybody else in to help reduce the costs with the assessments, so, you start looking at space to grow or other buildings. If anybody has any ideas, I'm open to them, but that's the only one I have right now. It's connected through fiber. That's where the main infrastructure goes through, is the town annex right now, and then it comes to us. So it'd be the most cost effective as well to move from the public safety building to the annex.
Mike?
Yes, sir.
I have a couple questions.
Yes.
Could you bring me up to speed a little bit on Warren, because this is really the first time I'm hearing about it.
Yep.
Did we, as in the town, go to Warren and try to
Recruit them.
recruit them in, or are they coming to us saying, hey, we're without a dispatch center, can you help? Because they're not really
They-
local.
They have a dispatch center. They're having issues. They've recently looked at regionalizing with a couple other communities. It fell through them. After that happened, they came to us. They had previous talks with Nathan Kenny, which was the first director here, years ago. And they remember that conversation, and then they reapproached me approximately 2.5 weeks ago and just started the basic talks of where we can move forward. And here we are. They want to move here. We want to do it right. We don't want to rush it. Logistically, it'll all work. Radio, telephone, internet connection, everything. It'll all work. All my engineers have agreed on that as well. There's a plan in place to move forward.
And if I could add, please, through the chair, State 911 has also committed to working with Warren to get them up and running to connect them to this regional dispatch center. So State 911 is vested in this, it appears, too.
And then my future plans is to grow that side of the district, possibly Palmer and Ware after that. Those are the other 2 communities that expressed interest in regionalizing with Warren originally, but then it fell through. I don't know the reasons why, but that would be my next course of action after Warren is brought in, if we could.
So we're actively looking to expand our regional dispatch domain.
Yes.
There would be significant, with this, I know Mike mentioned it, but the member towns that are already part of the regional dispatch center would also be starting to see significant reductions in assessments. When there are increases in population being served by the dispatch center, there's going to have to be staff added. But this example, what are the potential savings with just Warren being added? Sorry, you're on the space itself.
This is with adding Warren to our
Thanks.
This is current budget. So the left side is the current budget, the right side,
Yeah, I saw that.
right side is adding warrant. That's with not adding any extra support money coming from the state. That's with last year's grant award. That goes for this year's budget right now too. That's the 274,892. That will change this year as well. We just don't have those figures in place yet. The grant hasn't been awarded. So that number will change on both sides, Warren and Rutland, more on the Warren side due to additional community coming in. Also bringing them in, that brought that 25,000 to 50,000 with the wireless direct, puts us in another tier, gives us more support money on that end.
So adding Warren and these other towns, is that gonna like mandate us to move from the existing space to something bigger like the Henry Woods building? I mean,
It's not mandating
is
us,
that put us
but
overboard?
it's not mandating us. We can take Warren where we're at right now, but looking at Palmer and Ware, we will not be able to bring them in without looking at new space.
And the grant will pay for that?
Yes.
All of it, all the
All of it.
renovations.
Mike, am I,
And everything that's going with Warren right now, there's no cost to us for that. That's all gonna come from the development grant, changing their radio system, all new portables out there, MDTs, all the infrastructure would be paid by the state.
am I looking at this right? Warren's percentages on population put them just over Barry?
Yes.
Call
And
volume?
that 5,100 is not, I believe it's 5,500. That's the number that I got from the chief, but I'm pretty sure it's higher than that, so that's even gonna bring it up higher.
Okay, that might be like a 2010 census
Yes.
number or something.
Yeah.
Do you happen to know, and I don't expect it necessarily tonight, the square footage differences, what you're in now versus this, versus the NX versus Woods?
I did not put that together, but
Okay.
it's tremendously.
And then the letter we got from Warren,
Yep.
are we the first board to hear about this? Have you presented already to the
This is
other?
the first board, yes. Some of the town administrators, all the police chiefs have been updated about this, fire chiefs as well. I'm meeting next week with Barry, and then the following week with Oakham, and still have to plan one with Hubbardston.
And a question about Hubbardston, because when you talked about the district model, you
Yes.
didn't include them.
What's that?
You didn't include them when you started talking about your district model.
Well, they're on board.
Yeah, they're on board.
They're on
That's what I
It was
thought. I was just
Hubbardston and,
checking.
yeah, Hubbardston and Rutland were the ones that signed the letter of support with
Okay.
moving forward with the
Great.
district. It was Barry and Oakham that,
Do you
not.
anticipate there being a challenge to get the other communities on board with the district model, or is it just a conversation that needs to be happening?
I think it's just more conversation, more questions that need to be answered, especially on the Barry side. Oakham, I don't think they had, well, their reasoning was they didn't have the manpower to put on the boards. Something that we have to work out. They're more than welcome to appoint other members, as the draft said, so just little logistics that have to be worked out. And that can come further down the line. Right now, I'm just looking to get an IMA signed by all 5 communities to move forward. and
Which
start
can be
working on
the
this
existing
process.
IMA, they just, State 911 wants all, State 911 wants all signatures, I don't know why that's happening, feedback. They want all signatures on one document, right now it's kind of scattered throughout,
Yeah,
so.
there's 3 different IMAs right now with signatures all over, so.
Through the chair. How far along are we in the process? Is this like just beginning? Are we all stepping in?
Just beginning.
Has there been any other discussion prior to tonight?
Many discussions, in some cases with other communities. I would say Princeton, back in the day, was a
Spencer.
discussion, and Princeton ended up going with Holden.
And Spencer was the most recent, which was
Spencer,
last
Yeah.
year's.
So maybe we could be brought up to speed later.
Absolutely.
Because if you look at the letter here from the Board of Selectmen in Warren, it sounds exigent that, hey, we need to, we want to be accepted. This is an urgent request.
Yes.
So if we were to say accept Warren, yeah, you can come in, we're gonna put you online and, start dispatching. What additional resources are you going to need to take on another town?
Just one more full-timer at this point
One
with their
more.
call volume, yep. And that was all built into those figures as well.
So the figure says 133,000. Is that the benefit to Rutland or a benefit to the?
Where are you at with 133?
That's
Oh,
Warren's
that's
assessment
Warren's,
for Warren.
that's Warren's assessment. That's what Warren would pay towards the operating budget.
And who gets the money? The rec?
The town of Rutland does.
Yeah.
So that's the benefit minus, the cost of a full-time dispatcher.
But
Yeah.
includes the
That-
cost
that
of the full-time.
includes-
If you look at the assessments to the left, this one, versus that assessment, every town's assessments will go down slightly because of the sharing of services, even with the addition of a full-timer.
Yeah.
right?
Rutland's case, it's about $42,000.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, it is. All right. I think that, I wanna hear more.
Yes.
I'll have more for you as we move
Can
forward,
you,
yes.
you know, to Jeff's point,
Yes,
if everything were to go perfectly,
Yep.
what would be our active date?
so the agreed date between everybody right now, we're looking at January 1.
Okay.
That's what we're looking at right now. Could be pushed further, could be cut back. All depends on how the process goes. If we're moving quick and their dispatchers start looking for new jobs, quitting, stop showing up, that's where
Right.
we have to step in and assist. So it may get cut
State
short.
911 is also willing to cover all of that cost too.
Yes. So if that does cut back quicker, they'll pay all the overtime costs that occurs on my budget. They're gonna pay for that,
Okay.
Yeah,
which was already agreed.
they want to see this happen.
It's generous.
Yeah.
Last question, I'll stop
sir.
questioning. Have we heard from the chiefs on this prior to tonight? Not to put you on the spot, but I mean, previously, have we heard the
Yes.
opinion of the two departments?
This is the first
A little-
official,
We
this is the
haven't
first,
spoken with the board about it, but
Yep.
we've been in communications with Mike and with the town administrator. And, I've been through the addition of both Hubbardston and Barry, and there was a big concern both times that we were gonna see a reduction in our services, and we haven't. Mike, with the increased funding, increased staffing, each time the service from the dispatch center has gotten better. And, Mike has assured me that with the addition of Warren, there will be no reduction in services, and it's gonna be a great financial benefit to the town.
So you're in favor?
I am.
Seth? Thank you.
thanks, Mike.
Thank you. And I'll move for you next time.
Through the chair, if I could just
Did I miss something? I'm sorry.
restate the need to continue to look at space options, because this might not end with Warren. Now you've got Palmer and Ware out there who are going to be told they need to change, plus other towns too. So the space issue needs to be continued to be discussed.
Mike, were you looking for action tonight, or do you still have to get your
Nope, no,
documentation ready?
we gotta,
Okay.
I'm drafting up an IMA and then I'll come back to the
Okay.
board with more information at that time.
And what happens if this whole operation moves to Barry, to the Henry Woods building? Does Rutland lose control?
We go through the same angst that the other communities did when their,
We just
when
pay-
their centers closed down, yeah.
But it's Barry's problem then, or?
The host community has
depends.
certain issues and certain benefits, would you say?
All depends on who remains fiscal agent and
Yeah.
how
I
the
would-
IMA's written and,
I would guess that Barry wouldn't want to take over the fiscal agent responsibilities, that it would be just a location.
yeah.
But
I've-
again,
I've had
it's a
some-
shared location.
Yeah.
It's not dispatch's own building, own
Right.
space. And not only that, with your infrastructure that you have surrounding you now in the center of town, that's all gonna have to be reconfigured as
Right.
well if you move out of town. So
Exactly.
there's a lot. to
There's
be-
a lot, it's more of a cost to move to Barry as well for the state 911 department. It's a longer distance. Because they run their own fiber line into the building, so we have a dedicated fiber line for the state 911 department, so. Just think about, just discussions.
Question, can
Through
you,
the
yeah,
chair.
name and,
And he knows
name,
what I'm gonna say.
Oh,
name and
yes.
address, please.
Dick Williams, planning board.
Yes, sir.
No way do I want you to move into the annex.
Hey, I understand.
We're hopefully getting a
Understand.
full-time planner. And we need to be settled. We don't need to be hossed around. So why not put
Nobody's-
another floor on your complex over there?
Where? Above the dispatch center, it's not enough room. Not enough room. The dispatch floor itself.
You can't even put more steel work in there and.
Above that is gonna be
Above-
the same square footage.
A whole new roof, a whole new thing for crying out loud, I'm talking about.
It's gonna get
Reuse the room.
very costly.
Let's have a look.
That's just a discussion. There was only
That's-
one building that was brought up and offered it out there. If anybody has any other ideas, please bring them to me.
I had an idea, but it's a pit in the ground. next
I
to us,
know, I know.
But it has to be
Great
an
idea.
existing space, has to be a renovation and
which
not
is
a-
frustrating
Yes,
because
very
they'll-
frustrating.
we get the land, we don't have the.
we have plenty of
Right.
land and we have wonderful locations, and I feel like this needs to be revisited, and you know where I'm headed.
We put the
Agree.
primary building back up.
Please, perfect, please.
State 911 has
Should've
made
tore
it
it down.
clear, they will not pay for new construction. So,
Frustrating.
it is.
Thank you, Mike.
Mike,
No problem.
tell
Thank
your
you.
folks to keep up the good work.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Moving on, Mr. Barron, come on up for our managed growth study, phase 2.
Good evening. Thank you very much for having me here. My name's Ron Barron. I'm with the Central Massachusetts Regional Planning Commission. For those of you who haven't been to one of the events that I've been at yet, I've been working very closely with the town for over a year now on this project. We're about to start moving into the second phase of the growth management study that we completed last year. And Margaret asked me to come in and give you guys sort of an update about our timeline, what it is that we're trying to do. And so just in case anybody isn't 100% familiar with where we're going and what we need to do. So I have a few slides. I'm going to kind of go quickly through them. I added more information than I probably needed to, so because I wasn't sure exactly how much time I was going to have. But here we go. So again, just for the general background, everybody knows how quickly the town has been growing. We've been adding houses and residents at an extremely fast clip, much faster than a lot of the neighboring towns, most of the towns your size. And last year around this time, actually a little earlier than this, the town came to CMRPC and had asked us to conduct a growth management study on some parcels, because what the town had realized is there were some parcels that had been approved over the years, but especially during the period where you were getting a lot of new development during the last big housing boom, that had been approved but hadn't been built. And so the question that they wanted to know is how many were there? If we built all of them out at once, what would it end up looking like? And that was what the first phase of this study was. We found out that there were about plus or minus 400 lots that had been approved that hadn't been built at the time that we had done the study. I think maybe that number may have shrunk a little bit because there's been some building since we finished these numbers. Just a few little facts. We found that the population of the town has been increasing on average about 27% per decade since the 1990s. And since 2000, we've seen about 17% growth. That's based on the most current estimate that the town did with the town census. And the housing unit growth, I thought this was really interesting. I actually did an average of all the housing units from since 1990 to see how many new units you've been adding. And you've been averaging 8% growth in housing units despite two fairly sizable reductions in the housing market that should have really slowed down housing unit growth, but you still were adding them at a clip of 8%. And so you've had a couple of sections where you had just a lot of units being added. And we did just a little index. I'm going to talk about this very briefly, but what we kind of did is we tried to do a quick little analysis that showed, looking at all of the investment in both development and people buying houses, sort of where the town compared to all the towns in our region. And the way this is clustered is this: we basically took the total of everything of all the investment that had been going on in our region in housing, and gave a percentage to each town of that market share, basically, and tried to see where you fell. And you can see that all of the ones at the far end are towns that are much more like the inner ring suburbs, your Shrewsburys, your Graftons, your Auburns. And the ones on the far end are the more rural communities. And Rutland is definitely skewed more towards inner ring suburban communities and behaving much less like more rural, smaller communities that you have in the region. And I sort of compared this to just two little clusters trying to control for some variables. And you can see that when you look at just the one on the left is just rural communities and how you compare to that. And basically among the rural communities we looked at, Rutland is getting basically all the growth. And even when you compare it to towns like Shrewsbury and Grafton, you're still like right in the middle. So definitely showing us that the town has been behaving over the years like a first order suburb rather than a farther out rural residential community. And so this is just a quick summary of the facts that we found. Like we said, plus or minus 400 lots. If all of those were developed at once, you're looking at between 1,000 and 1,300 new residents, as many as 500 new students, 60,000 gallons per day of additional water usage, 66,000 gallons per day of additional wastewater. And as I understand that there is a great deal of concern that you guys are right about now at or about to exceed your contracted capacity. You know, that's something that we're definitely going to be looking at in this second phase. And just as a quick back of the envelope calculation while I was writing this up, I just wanted to see if you added at about 50 new units per year, how long would it take you to build all those out? And you could do it in about less than a decade. And 50 units is low for what the town has been adding. Last few years, I think you were at like 55, 60, or not 60, but I think it was like between 50 and 55 units per year
We're in May, and the building inspector has already hit 35.
for this year.
Yes, yes, for this year, this
Yeah.
calendar year.
Well, and that's one of the things. It's in the last time that the market was this excited, was this hot of a seller's market. You were adding upwards. There was one year where you were adding almost 100 new units. Now you had an apartment complex that went in at that time, but you know, with the single family housing, you were still adding well over 60 units a year. So this 50 is pretty conservative.
Ron, did you say you did do a water study on this?
We didn't do a full water study. What we did is we did an estimate based on studies that had been done previously, which told us that if you added a certain number of new population, how much water would they be drawing down based on past performance. So we didn't look at any of the impacts. We didn't look at any what your capacity was. I did notice from some of the annual reports that we looked at that there was a lot of concern in those reports about the fact that you're pretty much close to maxed out, if not already exceeding your maximum draw on your main water supply. But we didn't look at how that would impact that.
We're pretty much maxed out now, or will be?
I don't want to speak to that because that was just something that I read in the report, that there was some concern that you were either getting close to or...
We're discussing that at this meeting. Gary will be addressing that.
But it's not something that we actually looked at a hard answer to, so I wouldn't really be able to speak to it comfortably.
But your facts are sound with the 60,000 per day. It's 24 million gallons of water additional that we have to come up per year.
Assuming that it moves in at the exact same, all the units get developed and you actually have the same per household growth rate that you would, yes.
In your build-out analysis, you're going to be delving into the infrastructure, the build-out costs for the infrastructure too, right? And the fiscal impacts in water, sewer? In
Yes,
this phase
exactly.
two?
And
Okay.
we're about to talk about now what we're going to be doing for phase 2. So we looked at this sort of cursory. We only had a year to work on it. Wasn't a whole lot of time. And so we managed to get, I think, quite a lot of good data. But we want to be able to do in the second phase, do something a little bit more in depth. So what we're going to do this time is we're going to do a full build-out analysis for the town. And what that's going to look at is we're going to look at all the available land that's still there, take out everything that's protected, everything that's fully constrained, and only look at land that can be developed for residential housing. And then we're going to see how many lots you can potentially pull out of that based on current zoning and based on other constraints. We want to look at, then we're going to take all of those lots, see how many, what the kind of impacts would be on that in terms of population growth, in terms of sewer capacity, in terms of roads built, basically in terms of whatever constraints or whatever variables the town is most concerned about at this time. So what we would like to do is, once we've done that, we're going to take the recommendations that we come from this. So if we see that there are some certain, there are any zoning amendments or policy changes or any kind of actions that the town can take, this grant has money in it specifically earmarked for implementation. So the third phase of this that's going to be happening next year is after we've done all the analysis, after we've made our initial recommendations, we're going to be able to take that to the town. We're going to be able to have public hearings, and we're going to be able to implement that with the town. Hopefully, if there's anything that includes if there's any bylaws that need to be amended, we have the money to go to help you go to town meeting and try to get those things passed, if that's something that has to come out of it. This is just a quick overview of the project tasks. Basically, I touched on all of them, including the implementation, so I don't think we really need to go over that again. As far as the timeline, the build out is going to start is going to start off in a couple of weeks. We are going to be doing that internally. We already have all the data that we need for it. We're going to need a couple of weeks to develop the model, come up with that, and then there'll be some input with the town that'll be required as far as we have there's two pieces that end up going in it where we pull land out of it. The first one is we call them the absolute constraints, and this is any land that's under conservation, or it's wetlands, or it's within a specific buffer, or it's in a zone, it's already built, that kind of stuff. But then there's the other constraints, which are a little bit more nuanced. There's like aquifer protection zones, slopes, things like that can impact the development. They can make a plot of land less developable. Point being, that's the kind of thing we're going to come back to the town after we've done the initial analysis and start to ask how much impact do you think these are, and we're going to be working with you guys on developing that. After that, that preliminary data will be utilized to start building the framework for the fiscal impact analysis, and that's where we're going to need more involvement from the town. And one of the things that we're thinking about looking at for next steps is the possibility of the town forming a steering committee that can help work on this project with us, because it would be extremely helpful to have members of various boards, the planning board, the Conservation Commission, Board of Selectmen, basically any commission or board that has a stake in this. It would be good to have a representative on, so that way we can have from the very beginning the input we need to make sure that this product is as effective and useful as it can be. And then finally, once we've done this, then we'll do the recommendations over the winter, and then next year through the early winter and spring, we'll be coming up with a package of things that the town can implement, that with the goal that if we have to take anything to town meeting, we'll be able to do that for the annual town meeting next year. So again, for the next steps, we will be beginning doing the framework for the build out and analysis, and there's no action, I believe, that the board would need to take tonight, but we could, because we're probably not going to be really needing to call upon a steering committee until we've developed the model and we've started doing the preliminary analysis. But then we'll start to need to get the feedback from the different boards and committees so that we can have that going. So we're probably thinking maybe early summer, mid-July, something like that. We'd want to start having a committee if that's a possibility. Again, it's not a requirement of the grant, but it is something that would make it a much more streamlined process.
Are you willing to work with us on the specific charge for the steering committee?
Certainly,
okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And those are just the bullet points up there were just a couple of recommendations. Typically with committees like this, we'll meet monthly. They tend to be subject to open meeting laws. So that has to be taken into consideration. And hopefully we will be able to have something pulled together in a reasonable time frame that the town will be able to implement by this time next year. So is there any questions?
When you do the build-out study, Ron, how are you going to work in the options between existing sewer, available sewer, possible limited sewer district? What will that look like if you're starting right away?
Well, what we'll do is we'll run the numbers based on what exists right now. So if there's no real limitations, like right now, when we look at the sewer in the water, we'll look at what's there. So if there's anything that's not already connected to the sewer, we'll assume that it's not going to be. But obviously that's not necessarily the case. And that's where we'll start to, once we get those preliminary numbers, we'll look at the zoning requirements as they are on the ground, and we'll bring that information to the town. And if we get feedback that says, well, we think that it's not that realistic that people won't run sewer out to this road because we've seen it happen before, then we can modify the model and rerun the numbers and see what it looks like that way. But we're going to be looking at what's there now and then start from there.
Okay, thank you. Mm-hmm. Anybody? No? Thank you
Thanks,
so
Ron.
much.
Exciting.
So exciting. Is St. Patrick's represented? You guys can stay there if you want. Okay. Since there's just introduce yourselves.
Yes, Joe, we know you have a good voice.
And I'll keep it to a low level.
Oh.
Alden Fleischer, representing St. Patrick's Parish. And first of all, Father Jim wanted to extend his apologies. He wanted to be here as well, but he had a conflict in schedule tonight. Robin and I sit on a committee that is planning our second annual St. Patrick's second annual Beer, Brats, and Blessings fundraiser event. And we're here tonight asking for a one-day pouring permit. One day, but actually the event is being held on June 2nd from 6 p.m. until 10 p.m. in the hall of the Parish Center over at St. Patrick's Church. It was a very successful event last year. Again, this is our second annual, so we're hoping for a repeated success story.
Question through the chair. Are we required to charge for these permits? Is there any, or is the church?
The board can actually choose to waive the fee.
Just keep in mind the precedent for
Right.
nonprofits, but absolutely, we can waive. We've typically waived permits that were within the town, as in basically use taxpayer money to go from one department to another, and we would waive those fees.
As the church? I need all the help I can get.
What's that?
The church
may want-
is other.
You may want to amend this, it says 6 to 9, if you're gonna do it from 6 to 10.
Oh, it doesn't say, yes, it should be 6 to 10. Yeah.
So you get a motion?
Does anybody have any questions? Anyone? No?
No.
Yes, I will entertain a motion.
Can I make a motion that we waive the fee for the church? And also that we approve the one-day pouring license for St. Patrick's, June 2nd, 2018, 6 until close.
Do I have a second on the motion as presented?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
No.
Comments? No?
No, I thank you for the
Thank
motion,
you.
appreciate that.
All in favor?
Thank you very much.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Unanimous?
Done.
Abby, can you do me a favor? Nobody signs this, the way this form is written. It says the undersigned, but nobody actually signs it. Can you add that? Thank you.
And change it to 10.
With the chair.
Yes,
Is Skip still on?
I'm not sure. Skip, are you still with us?
Skip?
Hello? The noise stopped. Yeah.
Skip? Okay. It's all right,
Still
well, I'll
connected?
leave.
That's
It's
a
still
no.
connected.
All right, thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Do
Thank
we
you
come
very
by
much.
the office
Signed.
and pick it up, or?
I'll shoot you an email tomorrow.
Sounds good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Appreciate it.
Moving on, is there anyone here for public comment? We have
Yes,
somebody
Dick.
nodding.
Yeah, really, Dick Williams, Overlook. Something I'm gonna ask a question after Gary gets done talking, but what I really would like to do, MassDOT last year, or was it 2 years ago now, was gonna do something about crosswalks. You know, have you heard from them at all?
We were just talking about this the other day. Gary was following up with MassDOT, the engineer that actually came out here. Have you heard anything back
I have
from
not.
him?
I have not.
No, not yet.
I reached out to him at District 3
Okay.
regarding those, Dick on Main Street in the center of town as well as further south of Worcester.
Gary, who painted the crosswalk on Palmagussit
We
across?
did.
Thank you. Is there any reason for us to not do the rest?
We generally do the painting in the beginning of the new budget season, when we have the money to buy paint.
Mm.
As you know, all the striping is done prior to school opening, so crosswalks are the first priority as soon as the money's there.
Okay.
All right, I have another one, remember I've talked about road certification, you know, and I happened to have a gentleman came into the planning board and looking, you know, we don't know what we're gonna do with this lot. It's one of these little small ones on Turkey Hill Road, and here we go again. And there was something else brought up, you know, about a private way. We need to get this thing done very quickly. You know, I don't know if there's any more funding through Central Mass Regional Planning or whatever, but we need to get these roads that we have in our town certified, so that anybody else that comes in, you know, I want to put 2 houses here, 3 houses, and here's a cart path, we're not gonna get hung again by allowing it.
I agree with Dick, but I think a good first step is back in the 1960s when the town actually accepted that statute about maintenance of public ways, it's snow removal from roads and sidewalks. I think the town really needs to clearly, and this is in the board's jurisdiction, the town really needs to identify those private ways that the town maintains under that chapter and section and limit it at that. And that way, at least the list can't expand, and then we can work on the road certification from that. But it would at least curb the growing list of private ways.
Yes, thank you.
Are you volunteering to put together that list?
Thank you very much.
I think the list of the town-maintained private ways would be easy enough to bring to the board. I think in the next couple of meetings, that's something that the town has record of, so we could at least start there.
I'm so loaded, I can't. Like I said, I have one that I'm gonna wait for Gary to ask about.
Anyone else for public comment? Hearing none, I'm moving on. I don't know if you heard me. Gary, you're up. Hold on, hold on. Public comment? Public comment. Mr. Carnacchioli. No? You're good, okay.
I'm here to support the 2 new select people.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your presence.
I want to screw this up on you, Margaret, because I'm
Gary, just hit the mouse pad, just touch the mouse pad. I don't want it to go back to the main screen, but, okay, that's it. It'll refresh it, that's fine. It's fine.
All right, I'll just give you a couple of updates. The first one I had on the list was Chapter 90. We have not received the official 377,000 yet, but we had a balance in the kitty of 236 left over from last year. Once we get to 377, it'll put us up over $500,000. So what I have done with the 236 that's in there is submitted 2 projects, one being Irish Lane, which was in dire need of work. Fortunately for Chapter 90, and fortunately for us and for those residents of Irish Lane, what we did was reclaim, calcify, grade, compact, and recalcify. So that road is a dirt road, and it will remain that with calcification treatments hopefully every year if it needs it. So I wrote it first thing this morning after we did get the rains, and I'm very happy with the outcome. I haven't heard anything, but and that only cost Chapter 90 roughly $25,000. The other one is what we've talked about in the past, especially last year, was for East Hill. So we're buying $30,000 worth of structures. We bought the pipe last year out of the initial project request, and equipment rental to dig the ditches for drainage, and the catch basins, and roughly 1,100 feet of paving. That'll cost us around $150 to $175 to do that, and that's where we are until we get the allotment, the additional allotment from Chapter 90. Any questions?
1,100 feet of pavement?
Yeah, Chapter 90 will only come out if you do 500 feet. So we're doing 1,100 feet. We have to do it in segments. We just don't have the money to do the whole 1.1. So it's actually the worst part of that, Wayne, the hill. You and I drove that. So the hill that's closest to the Pleasantdale side with drainage.
It's just gonna go down to the bottom and that's it?
Excuse me?
How far is it gonna go down? Just to the bottom of the hill?
Yeah, to the bottom, yeah. And then depending on, I mean, we can always add to that project, but we have to wait till we see what's left from the engineering of the Molten Mill Dam and also the tip. That's the big thing. Those are the big things on the plate for Chapter 90. Okay?
Also the what?
Tip and the Molten Mill Dam.
What's the tip?
Transportation Improvement Project is the Palmagussit work that's going from Main Street, approximately 1.1 miles to the Brunels and Richards.
Right.
New paving, streetlights, and sidewalks. Okay?
Schedule for 2022.
Or sooner if we can do it, but we'll see.
Gary, the intersection of Irish and is it Cameron? How did that?
No, that's maybe not even, that's probably a quarter way up from the Turkey Hill Road side.
Okay,
But that does go by there, does go by Cameron, that's taken care of.
okay,
And that goes all the way down to the intersection of Jamie Ann and Prospect.
okay.
The rest of Irish from that point to 122 or Barry Paxton Road is already paved.
Right, okay, thank you.
Okay. Then we have the infamous stormwater. It appears that the appeals have not gone through, although they say they're still fighting them. So effective July 1st of 18, we will be following the new stormwater rules and regs. From that point, we have 90 days to apply for our NOI at a cost of roughly $8,000. Now, so everybody knows, the schedule I brought to you folks several meetings ago of the 1.1 million that it's gonna cost us over a 5-year period, that's where this stuff comes into play. And that was, at the next meeting, I think Fred Sivian's coming to give you a little more education on where we are, where the state is, his suggestions and recommendations of how we raise this money. Mine was through I think I've mentioned, a stormwater enterprise. So there's a lot of work to be done, and as it progresses, I will certainly keep you up to date. But that is something, if the appeals win again, I mean, initially, the initial stormwater permit went from 2003 to 2008. It was a 5-year that was supposed to be implemented, obviously, after the 5 years. So we haven't had one since '08, so it's been 10 years mirroring the initial. And now all these expenses or costs are gonna come on us. And so it's gonna be a tough battle, but we're gonna have to dig in and take care of it. Okay, before I get into the water sewer, just a Rutland, Rutland Heights review. They had and I believe it was a successful with the Spartan race up there. The DPW chipped in with all other departments, police, fire, and got the place ready and dressed up. All the culverts have been cleared. The grass has been mowed. I don't know, and we do that generally twice a year. So the place looks pretty good. So it's just an update of where we are with the heights. Okay?
Did they leave the dirt up there that they hauled in?
The dirt did remain up there that they hauled in, so
Okay.
it's that stayed there. I did not know that dirt was coming, so I mean, people
didn't-
called me the next day and said, "Where'd the dirt come from?" I had no idea whatsoever.
What was it for?
Why did they haul dirt?
They hauled dirt in their gravel for the upside to get access, better access, so it wouldn't be so muddy for parked cars. So, but
At the heights.
at the heights, at the
That's
heights.
okay with you?
Sure, I'll take what I can get for free anytime. Sure.
It depends on what's in it.
I was gonna say, is it clean?
Depends on.
Now, we've got, I brought you some information, or I sent you all some information regarding water and sewer. And the gentleman from CMRPC brought it up and gave some figures. So, just off the get-go, if 400 new homes go in the town of Rutland, that's 176,000 gallons of water and sewer a day. That's not gonna cut it. Right now, we are permitted for 370,000 gallons per day. We are at 350. That leaves us 20,000 gallons a day for use. So everyone understands the max yield out of Mushkapog is 550. The process, and we are not even ready or permitted to apply for additional water out of Mushkapog yet. And the reason is that we have to be below 10% UAW for 3 consecutive years. And then their process begins, theirs being the DEP, to permit us for additional. But still, the max is 550. So we've gone, on the UAW, we've gone from 32% down to 15 to 17 now. So we've reduced that tremendously. But we still have to get it below 10. We gotta get to like 9% unaccounted for before the DEP considers us for the next step of the permitting process to increase the yield that we can take out of Mushkapog. So, like I say, when Ron said 400 houses, that's not gonna do it. So we have to be below 10%. And as far as sewer goes, Right now, we're at dot 540 gallons per day, 540,000 gallons a day. We're permitted for 537 for the rest of this calendar year, so we're already over. And a lot of that, hopefully, is due to I&I. Now that we've just passed the article so we can spend $325,000 on the I&I. The bids come in very good, by the way, under 200, so we are working on that. As you all know, Margaret especially, we had to ask for additional funds to pay for the sewer for the last quarter of 17.
Yeah.
And that was because of an extremely wet spring, so that tells everybody, all the communities involved with Upper Blackstone, that there was an I&I issue, which has to be taken care of. So as Weston and Sampson get started with this next process, of course, I can't say they're gonna reduce it by a lot, I hope they do. But after the cameras and engineering and design, and then construction, hopefully we'll be able to curtail some of these problems that we have with groundwater and so on and so forth.
You're still gonna be up against the limit.
Oh, yeah, there's
You're
no doubt
over the
about it.
limit now,
And-
you're
and
gonna
that's-
turn it
and-
down a little.
bringing to the forefront that I am here to present to the board, recommend to the commissioners that we have an immediate, as there is a process to get there, water sewer moratorium. As we set right now, we just cannot handle this. We don't have the capacities anymore until all of these problems are taken care of. Now, we have roughly 50 miles of line, water and sewer. We have 1,700 users, and as you can see from the map, that's our district. And I don't have a Hoosie, or whatever you call, a laser.
You can, I'll zoom in over.
She's gonna zoom it. whatever that means.
I'll zoom it.
So I don't know if anybody, I don't wanna certainly don't wanna get in anybody's way, but
There, so.
these are all the sub-areas. We got 1 up through 4. Those are all the ones that we have. Those I want to be defined sub-area, the district, the water sewer district, not to go beyond. This is, right here, that's Bryce Lemon. This one down here was the other proposal, which I said to Dick, I haven't seen yet, Noble Hill. Sooner or later, all of Bryce Lemon's gonna become part of the district, but I don't want it to be. I wanna stay right where we are, and then we won't have any danger of exceeding, going over what we're allowed.
We already exceeded.
Yes, that's correct.
We're already
I'm
over.
hoping that the sewer, part of it will go down tremendously once we have this study done. We skipped 5 years of the sewer inspection, engineering, and design, because we just didn't have the money to do it. We paid that, we saved the money, we got some funds into sewer-free cash, which got us up to about 500,000 or so, and we had to pay 300 and change, or got 300 and change approved for this study. And this is supposed to be done every 5 years, so that stuff. And we're also looking at replacing some defunct antique water line. And everybody knows how much it'll cost just for Clarios, for instance, to do that whole neighborhood. It's 1.7. We have $900,000 of free cash, and all I want out of that is $35,000 for engineering for the whole neighborhood, and then we have to replace the water line, which is AC, in bits and pieces. So, my recommendation, DPW's recommendation to the board, the sewer commissioners, is a immediate, through the public hearing process that we have to do, sewer and water moratorium.
Gary, before the questions, can you give a little bit more information? Obviously, half new, half old. So when it comes to inflow and infiltration, back in 2008, we started a 5-year program, and it was phased, where we found, do you remember the number? How much overall I&I?
At that time, total, we were at 700,000 gallons a day, and we reduced that down to mid-4s. So
We're
we are
back up
at,
to dot
we
five.
are, I don't know if, did I tell you what the sewer was? These go in annual increments, which we really had to fight for every year, because it used to be 5 years. So we're now at dot 540. We're permitted for dot 537, and the amount will go up to 543 on January 1st, 2019. Many more houses on sewer if we don't find a tremendous amount of I&I. We're over,
And this contract ends in 2020.
2020.
with a cap, and we have not begun any type of negotiations to extend it.
Could you educate me a little bit on what the moratorium, what an immediate water and sewer moratorium will do?
Moratorium for water and sewer will stop anybody from adding to the system unless they're, and what we've always put behind it was if we have a failed system that's within the district, within the water and sewer district.
It will not
failed
take
septic.
away what's already been granted.
Correct.
So to be clear, if sewer permits have been granted for any project whatsoever, it's not gonna take that away. But what it will do is it will pause any new applications, any new permits.
Well, Bryce Lemon is permitted per dwelling as we speak. So when it comes to the time that I can't permit them anymore, I just can't issue permits.
Can you point that out, Gary? When we're looking at Bryce Lemon, how many sewer permits are out on that piece of property right now?
How many, well, I wanna say 6?
6? I know 4 for sure, but it might be up to 6 probably by now.
Yeah, and
Out of
that's down close to the,
111.
on the Sharnik side, that's where they're starting, on Sedona. Woodside and Sedona, there's, I think, 2 or 3 on Woodside, and then there's 4 on
I
Sedona?
think it is 4.
Because I've been going down there
So-
doing the inspections.
How much more is that subdivision gonna add to this 440?
Well, I think the total is 117,
111.
111 four-bedroom houses, so 111 times 440. 440, it's 110 gallons per day per bedroom. I can do it on my calculator.
Mr. Connectly,
Yeah,
name and address, please.
Lou Carnicurli, 18 Blueberry Lane. I came here just to listen, but I just can't deal with it. Can't believe what I'm just hearing right now. But let me ask a question. I was told, as you know, I go to Florida a lot, so I don't know what's going on half the time in this town.
48.4.
But I've been told that we have a new water source somewhere down the bottom of Shannick Hill. Are we gonna develop that to take care of Muskapog? I
If we-
understand there's a water source there. Someone told me the other day, some reputable people here in town told me that there is a water source somewhere down Barracks Hill or wherever, down by that area, down where Bryce Lemon is. Are we gonna do anything with that water source?
Honestly, Louis, I'm not aware.
I've
Not
never
aware?
I've never heard
aware of
this.
a new water
I've never
source.
heard this.
Never heard of it.
Never heard of it?
No.
I'll have to look into it
So,
because I was
the-
told by pretty reputable people that there is.
I can't imagine this is the same thing, but we have had discussions in the past about whether or not we can tap into the Quabbin line that runs through
Right.
town. But that
Okay.
can't be,
Anyway, I'll further look into that. Now let's get to the sewage issue.
Well, if I could, I'd like to answer Mr. Walker's question. Upon full build, it's 48,400 gallons per day. At 100 and, what'd you say, 111 houses at 440. Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's all right. I've been interrupted before. But I interrupted you, but only when the chair said I could.
Many times.
In the 9 years that I was a selectman, for the better part of that 9 years, we were involved in all kinds of I&I work. And I thought we had it pretty well under control at the time I left in '06. And so the pipes that we were dealing with back then are now all leaking again. Is that what I'm hearing?
so when I don't think Skip's still on the
You came
phone.
in after I left. I left in '06.
I know.
We had done extensive work. In fact, they were working right in front of my house, just as I was getting out, I think.
When I came on in '07 and Doug was still on the board, we did a massive project to debt exclude, where were we, Gary? Was it 1.5 million?
Yeah.
Got it at the fall town meeting. They started I&I in '08, 5 years. Very aggressive program of I&I.
But that still was not the whole
No,
town.
yeah. So I don't know if you had the same issue where you had an aggressive, say, 5 years and then a gap where we then
It seemed
stepped
like
up again.
I'd have to talk to Doug, but it seemed like the majority of the time that I served on a board, we were working on I&I. And I thought we had it pretty well under control. I remember Carl Christensen coming to us about the amount of water we were losing on a daily basis, and we tried to educate the people of the town. If you're emptying a dehumidifier, empty it outside, don't put it down the toilet or in your shower, so we don't send any extensive water going. I still use it to go out and water my flowers. But I just can't believe that after all the work we did during the time I was there, that we have this major problem. But
It's-
We do, we do.
It is
And the
constant.
last thing I'd like to say is, this is the thing that really bothers me the most, what I just heard. There was a 10-year discussion, back and forth between the town, the state, and a particular resident. It started when I was a selectman. I remember the discussion. And finally, the discussion came to an end because there was an agreement to put a project down called Bryce Lemon. And if I'm hearing correctly, maybe I'm old now, maybe I'm not hearing right, that we're talking about, we could put a moratorium, and if there is, we're gonna stop that project from going forward. Because it doesn't cover what the town administrator said. If I heard the DPW superintendent correctly, the permits get set house by house. If that's true, after 10 years, I think that's despicable. I think that's deplorable.
My
And I'm
understand-
ashamed, I'd be ashamed to be a resident of this town. Why didn't we address that 10 years ago? Now, I hope I'm all wrong here. I hope I'm off base. I hope I didn't hear it correctly. I really do. I really hope I didn't hear it correctly.
You have to go with, I mean, he's the subject matter expert.
Mr. Konakali, I think you heard the beginning conversation of this. I mean, the first thing that's going to concern us is the fact that we know we have sewer line that's already headed down. We know we have sewer line that nobody wanted that's already heading up Charnock Hill. So when we start talking about a moratorium and what ends up being included, that has to be part of the conversation.
Also,
Why didn't you stop at 10 years? Why didn't you say, we don't have the capacity, we can't do this project?
We had a
It got approved. It got approved. State approved it, you folks approved it, everybody approved it after 10 years. Longest in the history of this town. And now, to me, it sounds like a backdoor job, but hey, what do I know? I'm out of sync.
Anything else, Gary?
My understanding is that, just what I said, if it hasn't been permitted yet, if there is a project that has not been permitted yet, that would be the project that's impacted by a moratorium. Anything already permitted would not be. That's my understanding, after
you're-
having
and you're
spoken with
correct, and
legal.
I'm sorry if I gave the wrong impression, especially to Mr. Cannacchioli, but Bryce Lemon was the first subdivision in town since the state gave the jurisdiction of sewer use extension permits to the locals as opposed to DEP. So the whole development is permitted for sewer.
Oh, it is.
And I don't, we're all saying it, or not all saying, but Mr. Cannacchioli is saying that we have millions of gallons of I&I. We don't know that until we get in there and do the,
Regardless of the I&I, again, unless you reduce it substantially,
Right.
hundreds of thousands of gallons, you're still gonna be up against it. This is the point. You're still up against your limit.
Yeah.
And that's where we have a problem.
Chairperson, I don't remember my using the word millions. I don't know what the superintendent's talking about. All I said was during my time, we did a lot of I&I work. And I'm just concerned that it's still bad. I don't know what happened to all the work we did. If that part that we did years ago, if that's failing, and it's failing only after about 7 or 8 years, I got off in '06, well, 12 years. I'm concerned that it's failing that quickly, but maybe that's what happens.
I appreciate that. I mean, I think you know well, it's a constant process.
Oh, I
It's a
realize that.
constant maintenance
I realize
process.
that.
And when we have gaps in that maintenance, areas that might have been fine 10 years ago are no longer fine. We have breaches in different areas. I do think, to your point, it would be great to see a history of when we really started doing our I&I work and where we've headed since then. So that would include the projects that were under your jurisdiction when you were on the board, the stuff we did 5 years ago that started in '08 with the money we got then, and the stuff that we're about to start now. Maybe we can put that together.
yeah, and my proposal to further with the board is that we'll have to publish a town hearing notice for 2 weeks, and I'd like to have that public hearing on Wednesday, June 6th, at a place and time to be decided.
Could be here, if the board is available.
What's already permitted besides Bryce Lemon?
I can't hear you, Ann.
What's already permitted besides Bryce Lemon?
Nothing. That is, that's, like I said, the first sewer use extension permitting process. The only thing that gets permitted now is lots that are available that have sewer and water that go by it or near it. That's all. Now, don't forget, part of Bryce Lemon included Pleasantdale, Kenwood, and those folks on Main Street who have failed systems.
How about individual homes that are being built now that have been granted permits? So they're not actually using the town sewer yet, but they have been permitted,
Have
right?
been
So there are a
permitted.
number of those as
So,
well.
yeah, there's
Okay.
a few. There's
But they've
not-
been permitted?
Yes,
So they're,
yes.
okay.
Yeah, so we're looking at from this point forward, or whenever it's decided by you, the commissioners, and the Board of Selectmen. This is just my recommendation and my information to you.
Mr. Williams?
Is the heights still included in there, or is that?
The heights, and I talked to Margaret about this, tapped into some of the selectmen, and I just wanted to be sure that a year ago or whenever we did it, that the Heights has a guaranteed
It does.
amount of
The Board of Selectmen
30,000
voted it,
gallons.
and I believe it was
And I
45,000.
wanted to make sure that that remains the
45,000.
same, 30,000 gallons, because the lines are up there.
Yeah.
You're not gonna have any development. Nobody's gonna jump into that piece of property if you don't give them utilities.
The problem with that, though, is that reserve is not included in the actual. So that increases the amount even greater.
So, as the Board of Selectmen and as sewer water commissioners, we can begin this process if we so wish. So at the recommendation of the DPW superintendent, we can schedule the first step, which is a public hearing. And that would be with a motion.
Well, we still have to get his hand up.
Yeah, excuse me,
Sorry,
I had
I'm
one
sorry, I
more,
missed it.
I want one more thing that, was gonna bring up at the public, but, you do know that right now, from Bryce Lemon, the line goes through a private road, a private way. The line that he put in and down. Was that permitted?
That's part of, if I may, that's part of the sewer use extension. That's the completed project that goes down Fairview to Phillips and out to Maple.
So there's no chance that the individual homeowners on that road can turn around to the town after the town tries to take it over and say, hey, no, you owe us $10,000 a month, you know, for, on their road, it's their
Their
road.
road, but that would go through the easement process, like in so many other places in town for as far as.
So has permits been done? If they haven't, to me, I mean, you better make sure that nothing can come back and haunt you on that one. That's my grief on that
Are you
one.
asking about the granting of the easement? Or the granting of the easement?
Yeah, the granting of the easement for him to put it in there, to dig it in and put it in. And was there, was everything done proper?
Okay, so it's a private way, and so that granting of the easement would have to have been done by the person installing the sewer and the abutters, the people whose properties it's crossing. So that I don't know if anybody, I haven't heard anything
Yeah,
about how that.
The question has been asked before, Dick, so I can't answer that honestly, so I'll look at it. I just don't.
I don't know if that's something for the,
Okay.
I just don't want the town to be nailed later, if something goes wrong with it.
Okay, so why don't we as commissioners send a letter to the owner of the line? Asking
Find out
for,
about that
asking for backup information in the letters that went out. They had to have had formal approval,
Yes.
but it didn't come to us.
It would also be reflected in the property deeds. So that's another place we can look.
Thank you.
So Sheila, you're looking for a motion on the DPW superintendent's recommendation?
That would be our process. He's asking for the first step in a process.
First step would be to
Yes.
advertise and line up the public hearing.
And yes, and advertising would be on the board's vote. And you're suggesting Wednesday, June 6th,
Wednesday, June 6th.
6 p.m., 6
Yes.
p.m.?
Gary, why not a regular meeting night?
Because legal is not available.
Yeah, we wanted legal to be a part of that, so.
Okay.
We tried for the 2 Mondays, actually had tried to have a special, well, we got one on the 4th, and then we tried for the Monday following, and he couldn't make it, so.
So we'd have to post it tomorrow, Wednesday morning. Yeah, 2 weeks posting.
For June 6th.
June 6th.
It's not required to be 2 weeks, but we want to give it 2 weeks,
Right.
so.
Yep.
So I will make that motion that we, per the request of the superintendent of the Department of Public Works, initiate the process for an immediate water and sewer moratorium or public hearing to take place on Wednesday, June 6th.
7 PM, yeah.
7
Maybe
PM?
7
7 PM.
7 PM. Can I have a second? Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there any more discussion? So again, this is the first step of a process. We are setting a public hearing.
Just asking for a hearing.
For discussion.
Yes. Yep. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous.
Just as a point of procedure, once the public hearing takes place, the board's vote and the outcome of that hearing is gonna have to be posted 3 weeks simultaneously after the hearing, so everyone knows the results of that hearing, so it's a matter, part of the process.
Okay? And that's all I have.
Thank you for your efforts.
Gary, tell your troops to keep up the good work.
Thank you very much, I will. Thank you for the comment.
No questions for Mr. Keller? We all set? All right,
Thank you, Gary.
thank you. Sounds like you're up, Mark.
Okay. All right, so the only thing I have in updates, we can get into town meeting recap and budget, but updates. Quite a while ago, I brought to the board a recommendation to establish goals and objectives for the coming year. And in your packets tonight, I have that same template that I showed the board, it had to have been at least a year ago. And with just some ideas about what to put on the list of goals and objectives. So in order, there are so many things happening in town. A lot of it involves growth, infrastructure, and I think it would be helpful to me and possibly to the board to keep you on track in different governmental areas to establish goals for yourself. What would you like to see in the next year? And what would you like to see happen policy-wise over the long term? So I don't have mine with me, unfortunately. Oh, is it? Oh, okay. All right. I must have pulled it out with this. So, I don't know if the board has any thoughts. I know this is kind of a new, this might be a bit of a new concept, but it would help, I think it might help guide future meetings and keep on this track, keep the board moving forward in certain areas. So I've put a few things in. So I have categories that I've outlined. We could do it however the board likes. But one of the big categories would be fiscal management. And as an example of an objective for the coming year, take some time to review and update the town's financial policies. Get to know the policies and update them as needed, especially based on the auditor's recommendations. The next would be capital buildings and infrastructure. We know we have challenges with maintaining our buildings and infrastructure. So this is another thing that I had brought to the board, I don't know, at least a year ago, I guess, to possibly establish a town buildings review committee to assess the condition of buildings and make recommendations on upgrades and repairs for our town buildings. Another one would be establish a senior center planning task force to begin exploring options for a new senior center. Establish water and sewer district boundaries, formally establish those district boundaries, and explore the possibility of forming a water commission and sewer commission. The next category, economic and community development, still an ongoing challenge the town has. I've included the growth management study phase 2 in here and start reviewing that, participate in it, and see if there are any zoning bylaws and local regulations and things we can change based on recommendations made in this study. Begin our streamlined permitting implementation process right at the start of the fiscal year. The streamlined permitting software has been funded, and we were fortunate enough to find out last week we got a grant to cover all the one-time startup costs, in addition to a grant to fund the implementation consultants. So that's something that we should be getting moving on. Another is moving forward with the recreational marijuana establishment bylaws. Now, we know the bylaw subcommittee is doing a lot of work on that. I think the board, periodic updates to the board might be really helpful as we head toward the fall. The next category is citizen engagement and communication. One of the big things that we've discussed over and over and over again, and I'm sorry that Mr. Carnacchioli left because he was in my office talking about this the other day, the permanent LED community signboard right in the town center. Put that up there, have it available for emergency notification, town civic events, town meetings, and things like that, and make it permanent, nice looking signboard. That's something that we can get started with this coming fiscal year. Next, municipal operations. The last time I showed this to the board, we had a subcategory called develop succession plans for management positions. Now we find ourselves having to develop one for the DPW superintendent position. Review and approve the updated personnel policy manual. This is something that's been kind of on the back burner over the last 2 years. I'd like to start bringing chapters to the board to review and approve and move forward with. And then review board and committee appointments and charges. So actually look at all of your appointed committees. Take a look to see if there are established charges for the committees, see if updates need to happen. And finally, regionalization and shared services. This is very vague at this point, but continue to pursue shared equipment and services. Regional dispatch is one that's a very good example now. So same thing with regional ACO, regional highway equipment contracts. So if the board has any suggestions about how to outline this, I'd request that the board give this some serious consideration, add subcategories at your next meeting, and let's lay out a plan for the coming year.
Okay, so can we ask all board members to put some thought over the next week into your goals and objectives? And they might be personal ones, they might be those for the town. I think, Margaret, the only thing maybe we can consider changing is to put some harder dates on the less long-term ones, so that we really have a year-long schedule that we can kind of follow. Obviously with the, for example, marijuana, which you wrote all of these as examples, but they seem like all real ones to me.
Yes.
Marijuana is very time sensitive. We really only have the summer to get our bylaws and requests and information straightened out to be ready. Let's set that up for the June 4th agenda. And the one other thing, and I honestly don't know how to frame this, I know other communities have done it, is for the board to be able to workshop together to figure out how we're gonna best be able to accomplish all of this. It's often
You have a work session or a retreat. A lot of boards do that.
Exactly.
So yeah, we can look into doing that.
That would be great. And
Mr. Williams?
one second, and in addition to that, I think let's send that out to all of our department heads, our committees and commissions, see if you guys have any big ticket items we should be all talking about. I think the other thing we maybe should consider doing again is liaison. And we can talk about that. The boards used to do liaisons among the different committees and commissions. With Margaret here, we obviously don't have the actual need for it. On the other hand, we often have meetings that occur that nobody's in attendance. Maybe we should probably talk about that. And as far as your goals and objectives, and I would say this for everybody, if you feel like within your goals and objectives you need to have a meeting, get more information, can you include that? Whether that means taking you down to CMRPC or whatever you need to do, and we'll get everybody up to speed.
Okay. All right, so this will come back on June 4th.
Oh, sorry. And I forgot Dick.
How can you forget
I
that?
don't know. I didn't look.
Because I drove through it the other day. I think it'd be a good idea if the select board ought to probably talk to the select board in Holden of maybe a byway. How are you going to get this traffic from Rutland to Worcester or to any place? They're taking all kinds of back roads right now, and I feel that 20 years ago the planning board went to talk to the planning board in Holden. They thought it was a great idea. The northern route sounded like a great idea, and it disappeared. Well, you guys have probably been in the traffic jams in Holden. It's only going to get worse as we build up Rutland. So, I think that's something that you ought to put in your objectives.
Okay, thank you. Was there anything else from Margaret? You wanna keep going, or?
If you'd like to just jump right over to the town meeting recap, we can do that, or would you prefer to just go in order? We can go in order, we can come back
Go
to.
in order, we'll save
Okay.
that for
Okay,
last.
all right.
Could I have a motion, to accept the resignation of Jake Pettis from the Conservation Commission?
Can we discuss why?
Well, we could. The letter, however, does not give a reason. I, Jake Pettis of 240 Palmagussit Road, am respectively delivering my resignation and withdraw from the Rutland Board of Conservation. Notice of withdrawal is effective immediately on delivery of this letter.
Happy to accept it. Do we normally reach out, some sort of a closure on when somebody
used
drops
to.
in a resignation on us?
We've done, since I've been here, we've done exit interviews for employees, but not for board and committee members. I'm happy to contact
Is
them.
there an issue we should know about?
Well, this is our second conservation resignation in
Mhm.
2 weeks, so it would maybe be,
Mhm.
we don't know if there's any
Yeah.
underlying reason or if it's just something they were done with,
Is it something Margaret can handle on her end?
definitely.
So I'll make a motion that we, with regret, accept the resignation per the request of Jake Pettis for the conservation, from the Conservation Commission.
Thank you. Effective May 2nd. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. All right. Seth.
Yes.
NEMA Public Safety Statewide Mutual Aid Agreement, all circled and underlined and highlighted. Would you like to come up, or Margaret, does he need to come up?
If you'd like to speak to it, we don't have the actual agreement. What the board has is the sign-in sheet.
Yep.
Sign-on sheet, and the statute, under
You'd
which
emailed
the
it to
agreement,
us.
yeah.
Okay, what you got before you is a local option, acceptance of Mass General Law. There was some confusion of whether it had to be a town meeting approval or just a board approval, and apparently this is just a board approval. Both police, fire, and DPW fall under different mutual aid agreements throughout the Commonwealth. This gives a broader range of mutual aid capabilities to other boards and committees. Perfect example, after Hurricane Sandy went through, there was a lot of need for building inspectors to help devastation areas, things of that nature, Board of Healths, things of that nature for inspections, inspectional services. So this basically gives us a blanket coverage of any boards and committee would be eligible. We would be eligible to offer, or we would also be eligible to receive assistance from other communities. So it's just basically the letter is signed by the board, the letter is sent to MEMA's office, and then we just put on the list that we've accepted this local option. So
And this helps us with grants. Did I see something?
it could potentially help us with grants.
There's no